feature presentation.
And the minute stuff starts to turn red on the board is when they're like, I'm out. When really it should be the reverse, right? That's kind of what they're teaching in school. What else?
What's the hardest part of your job now?
So, my role, I don't have clients, okay? So my role, I'm managing the advisors. So the hardest part of the job is getting advisors to be successful that are transitioning into the business, right? So, let me ask you, like, I've given you a little bit, but when you start to think about what a financial advisor does, like if we really went around person to person to person to person, you start to talk about what an advisor does 5 years from now, 7 years from now, where you're helping clients through their biggest financial decisions and keeping them on track and helping them grow broke, from going broke. Up front, it's all about going out and finding those people, right? So every firm kind of does it a little differently. What's very important in wealth management is ownership of the relationship, right? So if we compare like a Fidelity, Charles Schwab kind of model to like a Merrill Lynch or a UBS or a Morgan Stanley. So Schwab and Fidelity are giving you clients, right? They're paying you a base salary with some bonuses on top of that. And your job is to service those relationships, try to find some more money in there, make the relationships more profitable. And you have a fantastic career. But let's say 10 years down the road, you're like, all right, I've got great relationships with these clients. I want to move to a Merrill Lynch or a Morgan Stanley or a UBS. You would not have the right to bring those clients with you. Right? So all those people you built those great relationships with, because the firm gave them to you, they own it. So that's why they'll pay you, call it $100 grand, but you'll kind of top out there. With Merrill, we're going to start you at 50 grand. We want you to be hungry. You go out and find your clients, and 10 years from now you decide you want to go to Wells Fargo, you've got every right to solicit those clients to go with you. Make sense? Question? Just fire away.
So maybe, I guess, big question, but how would you, in those cases, find those clients? Just cold call them?
How do you think?
Cold call.
Okay, what else?
Sign up for a country club.
What else?
Tennis club.
What else?
Golf.
Right? What do you think?
That would be what clients you already have.
Okay, how do you got to get them first.
Alumni network.
LinkedIn, all right. What do you think?
Well, good.
Sure, Savor.
Maybe sport outing.
Okay, sport outing. What do you think?
New friends,
Yeah, like, all right. All right. So like, at Merrill, we're going to give you the tools to go out and have those discussions, okay? But you got to go out and have them. And who do you have them with? Everybody. Everybody. So primarily, we're looking for clients that have north of $250,000 of investable assets. Okay, so that's assets you could put into the market that don't include your house. Okay, but like if you get in touch with somebody that's got 50 grand, sit down and have the discussion, because you're truly a business owner at Merrill Lynch. All right, so if you're going to end up servicing this person, you got to take care of them. If you think there's opportunity that they're they work for Google, they're making a bunch of money, they just don't have any money in the bank yet, go for it. But how do they do it? Kind of generally, there's networking and there's cold calling. All right? So on the networking side, we're starting with trust and relationship, and we're backing into business. All right? So the people that are on the spectrum of trust will be like your friends, your family, people you just met at the golf club, you join the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary, wherever, right? Old professors, right? You are looking to build trust with them. You have an understanding about what the opportunities, like what can we solve for at Merrill Lynch? And you wait for that opportunity where you hear that rub point, where they're like, oh my God, I just had a second kid I wasn't expecting, like I don't know how I'm gonna pay for college for the first one. I can help with that, right? Oh, I'm trying to buy this beach house, but this lender, I can help with that, right? Oh, I'm thinking about retirement, my account, I can help with that, right? So, but you gotta start with that trust. Make sense? And the trouble is that it takes a long time to build that trust. So friends and family, you got it. But the struggle is that they still see you as the kid that was like running around in the backyard. And you're trying to say, hey, give me your life savings, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Right? So you don't. Friends and family tend to be either your first client or your last client, and no real in between. But when you're out building that trust and relationship, like, you got goals you gotta hit. And that's where the cold calling comes into play. Now, how many of you at home have a home phone number? Right? I don't have a home phone. And when I go to my parents' house and somebody calls the home phone, everybody through the whole house yells simultaneously, don't pick it up. Does anybody else do that in their house? Yeah. Right? So you think about cold calling, you're like, well, how the hell do you do that, right? There's do not call, there's spam call, there's all that stuff. So we're really calling corporate directories, right? So we'll get a list of people that work at Verizon, and we'll call them. Now the challenge, and what we really try to do there, is position ourselves as having, like, if I just say, hey, I'm a financial advisor, just Merrill Lynch, we have 15,000 of them. But if I'm continuing to call Verizon, as my example, say I get one client, I should start to have a really good understanding of how Verizon pays their benefits package. Okay? So then when I get the next Verizon person, either that was an introduction from the first one, or I cold called the next one, and I can say, hey look, not only am I a financial advisor, but I know exactly how you get paid. Your deferred compensation, your 401k, any stock plans you have. So I'm going to make sure that the financial plan we put together, remember retirement, FDU, and beach house, is complementary to any deferred compensation that you're getting at Verizon. So that person's like, wow, you really understand what I'm talking about. Let's sit down and chat. Okay? Because if you think about it, like when we're talking about that networking, nobody is at the golf club at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. But you still got to fill that time. What questions?
How do you overcome the problem where you're giving advice to people like how to invest, but don't you have to demonstrate that you yourself have done well in investing to do that?
So, when we talk about the investment landscape, you all heard of robo-advisors and all that, okay? So, the value of actual stock picking, and how we talked about, remember that portfolio manager vibe? I expect my advisor to be able to construct an efficient portfolio, right? I expect him to be able to do that. So, and when we talk about your ability to get alpha, your ability to beat the market, that's not you. That's where you bring in a professional. So when we talk about a robo-advisor, the Fidelities, the Schwabs, all them, Betterments, they're charging 30 basis points to manage a portfolio. We're charging 1.5%. So, some perspective, charging $1 million, $1 million portfolio at 1%, that's $10,000 a year they're paying us to manage a portfolio. So if all I'm doing for you is managing your portfolio, you're going to be like, well shit, I could get that done at Schwab for a third of that. I'm going to go do that. So where we really turn in and add our value is that financial planning, is understanding the things that are most important to you, is keeping you on track when the markets start to go crazy, and it's centered around the things. So our advisors are spending their time having those financial planning discussions and not building portfolios, right? So as you think of as like a young kid coming in to wealth management, what would you think some of the major hurdles you're gonna have to overcome?
I'm not trusting this 25-year-olds with all my money.
Okay, what else?
You don't got them.
What else,
They spend their whole lives in front of a screen. How do they talk to people?
right? What else? So, look, I think, if you think about it from the perspective of, so the flip side of it. So I am a 65-year-old person nearing retirement. I want an advisor that has got the gray hair, has been through the market ups and downs. Okay, right? Somebody that's got all that experience.
If you're risk averse.
Right, it doesn't matter. If they're risk averse or not risk, but I want somebody that's got experience.
Yeah.
So, if we have a 65-year-old advisor and a 65-year-old client, they're both thinking about retirement at the same time. So as that client goes into retirement, let's say they've got 20 or 30 years of big investment decisions ahead of them, where they're pulling money out of their accounts to really recreate their paycheck now that they're in retirement. They're trying to transition their wealth to their kids and their grandkids. How do you do that? If they're working with an advisor that's the same age, they got to start over and pick somebody new. If they're working with an advisor that's 30 years old, that person's going to be with them all through retirement. They're going to be able to help their kids and their grandkids as well. And really the investment decisions you're making, you have the ability to bring in a portfolio manager, like a pro. So when I say that I'm going to charge you that 1%, that $10,000, that is to bring in a professional to manage your money, while I'm almost going to be the financial like the CFO of your life, right? I'm going to make sure your insurance is all set. I'm going to make sure your mortgage and then the liability part of your balance sheet is where it should be. I'm going to make sure the portfolio aligns to your long-term goals. Does that make sense? All right. So halfway through, right? What do you say we transition to what the job really is, right? Like, how do you get into it? Fair?
I have a question.
Go.
So how do you differentiate yourself from, okay, you say you have to build trust with people and it takes time, but how do you show them that you're not just a regular person, just coming up to scan them and give them all these promises of what they can and can't do, because when you being official and legit and what you can actually help them?
Almost never do we call somebody and they're like, today, that awesome, I want to buy right now. You got to build the trust, right? So even on a cold call, where that person says like, no, like my house is on fire, my financial house is on fire, I need some help. It's going to be months before we onboard that client, because we're spending that time to sit down to really get to know them. Like our process to onboard a client is at least 4 meetings.
So what do you start off by doing first? Like, do you just keep constant?
Listening. Right? You ask those big open-ended questions about like what is your relationship with money? How would you feel if you got hit by a bus tomorrow? Would you feel like your family would be all set? Like, those are the big, we got to get you emotionally thinking about your money so we can have a real discussion around it. Because for most of you, you're just earning it, right? And putting it in an account somewhere and just assuming it'll be there later. If we know it's important to you, we can, one, make that emotional connection, but hopefully get you more of it, and make your life a little bit easier. Make sense? What else? Anything at the satellite? So, let's talk about entry points into Merrill. Okay? So we have the whole Bank of America network. I'm just going to say we've got like 220,000 people working for the organization. All right? Let's just focus on the Merrill Lynch side. Fair? So when you think about it, at Merrill Lynch, there's a couple entry points for people coming out of school. One is in operations. That's where I started, right? It's kind of like the engine room of the cruise ship, right? It gives you an opportunity to learn what the business is all about. I had no business, so I did an internship my senior spring with an advisor I went to Trinity College up in Hartford. I met with him every Wednesday. Now this was, I don't want to date myself, but years ago, portfolio manager phase. We meet every Wednesday, we talked about clients and markets in the morning, and then beers and golf in the afternoon. I was like, sign me up. I will be an advisor in Alaska. I don't care, right? I applied to a bunch of jobs and didn't get any of them. And in hindsight, thank God, right? Because I wasn't positioned, I was a kid, right? And the role then was, here's a desk and a phone, Godspeed, right? Like, I'll see you in a year. So operations gave me an opportunity to learn what the job really was and see how different advisors did it. So we talked before about getting that client that had $50,000. Like, there are some advisors that just work with small business owners. There's some that just work with retirement plans. There's some that work with mom and pop. Some that work with the ultra high net worth, athletes, whatever. So I got to kind of see how the businesses work. I came here nights and weekends, I got my MBA. And then I was kind of at that crossroads where I said, what next? Leadership felt good to me, you know? But it was really about finding the right entry point for me. So, managing the advisor training program, I interview 10, 15, 20 candidates a week. A lot, right? And oftentimes, like, look, there's 3 hurdles you got to get over to be a successful advisor, just like general. One is sales, all right? Because in the end of the day, sales is, and this is sales, it's I have a product or solution, I identify a need that somebody has, and I'm going to motivate them to action, to do something with it, right? So positioning my financial planning as a resource to that person. If you're not comfortable in asking for the order, you're done. Then it's the markets. So everybody kind of watches the Dow and the S&P. And I'm not saying you got to be a trader, but you have to know what's going on to be able to have an intelligent discussion with somebody. And then last is our platform. So what are our products and services and solutions? Like, how would you know that we could solve for something when you're talking to somebody? One of the benefits of being at Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, is we can literally do everything for people. One of the drawbacks of being new coming into the business and not understanding the platform is we can literally do everything for people. So I can't download it in your brain fast enough before you got goals. Does that make sense?
Can you elaborate on everything for people?
So we've got the Bank of America network, okay? So just retail, traditional checking accounts. We've got Merrill Edge, which is like our discount brokerage arm. So we can do self-directed trading, which is mean you online entering the trade yourself. That's really our entryway for clients that have below $250,000. They can get connected to an advisor, they can have planning discussions, but just from a cost perspective, it makes the most sense. We have Merrill Lynch, so we help clients north of $250,000 with no cap on that. We have U.S. Trust for our ultra high net worth or complex family arrangements. We've got the business bank to help business owners that we can help a deli on the corner to the Googles and the Amazons and the Apples. Trust, insurance, annuity, everything, right? Everything that kind of has a dollar sign in front of it. So it's how do we have that conversation and know what's what. Okay, so we go back, we got operations is where you enter into the job. From there you can really transition to whatever role. So I started with a guy 6 months before me, we went through operations together. I went into leadership, he went and became a financial advisor. We have what's called client associate. Client associate is really the support to the advisors. And those jobs are kind of like, let's say 60% admin, 40% sales. And the sales there are really identifying opportunities to make the client's life easier, right? Like, let's get you on our online platform. Let's deliver your statements electronically. You keep having me wire money to your Wells Fargo account, like, we can do that here. Let's just make it easier for you. You're not really out there being like, hey, go get this credit card. Right? That's not what you're doing. From the administrative side, you're opening accounts and moving money around, and you're kind of the first point of contact. You'll probably talk to more clients in a day than an advisor would, right? Client associate and operations are kind of replace-only jobs. So what that means is, I get promoted, I leave the firm, I'm in operations, we're going to hire to replace my role. Make sense? Financial advisor, just in my office, I'm hiring 20 a year. Because our number right now is 37% make it from start to finish. It's hard. So I hire 20 a year. So you being fresh out of school, when you're like, hey, I'm applying to any company that would pay me money to go there, right? And you're like, okay, I really want to go to Merrill Lynch. I really want to be in wealth management. Let me try to get an operational job. There's one in Red Bank. Not particularly convenient. Let me try to get a client associate job. You know, there's more of those. In those roles, advisors will tend to look for either somebody that's been doing it for 20 years and is going to do it another 20 years, or somebody that they can groom to be and grow within the team. So there you got a 50-50 shot. But those are kind of replace only. And then we talk about financial advisor. Well, I'm in office, Short Hills is in office, Paramus, Bridgewater, Red Bank, Princeton, and then South Jersey down in like Marlton. Everybody's hiring. So you're like, well, if I want to get into the organization, I ultimately want to be a financial advisor, somebody will give me a job. So I really urge you to think about, like, what are the three bell curves, right? Like, am I familiar in sales? Right? Do I have an understanding of the markets? Do I have exposure to what these financial products are all about? Because if you don't, you're really putting yourself at a disadvantage. So when I'm interviewing young candidates and to see a talented individual, it's really like, what is the best entry point for this person? You know, like, somebody gave me a shot, I want to give the next person a shot. But I also don't want to have a tough conversation with you 9 months from now when you're not hitting your goals. But if we think that you'd be a great advisor 3 years from now, and maybe getting in through the bank side and being a teller for a couple years to learn the platform would be beneficial, we'll connect you.
Going off that example right there, if you see potential in someone, you just might want to have them work as a bank teller for right now. What does that tell in a potential financial advisor that you would see that would make you think, I'm going to hold on to them just for a bit longer because I see potential?
So I always get like, I'm in accounting, so I can't be an advisor, right? I should go be an accountant, you know? Or I did philosophy, so I was a poli-sci major, right? We had a $1 million advisor. He had an art show at St. Elizabeth's right across the street. He was the chief administrator for Sloan Kettering and has a degree in bacteriology. So it's really about your ability to make connections with people, care about them, understand what's happening in the markets, right? Know when to bring in a partner. But what I really look for is the soft skills, right? Can you hold a conversation, right? Do you understand what you're getting yourself into? Are you asking the right questions? Are you engaged in the conversation? Because I'll teach you how insurance and annuities and the markets will all teach you all that, but I can't teach you. So I always say to young people coming into interview, like, you're a 20-year-old pretending to be 40 to get money from 60-year-olds. Right? So that's kind of the mindset. Like, you have to be very comfortable walking up to your professors and having a dialogue around what's happening in the world, in their life, whatever, more than just how about them Yankees, right? How was the weekend? Like, you have to be able to engage that person and be like, wow, I want to hear more of what Kai's got to say, right? Because that's what's going to build that trust and start to build that rapport, so that give you an opportunity to find a window for the thing that you can help with. What else?
You find that, like, because I have brothers, like, in banking, like, you find that you kind of get pigeonholed, or, like, I don't know what the right term is, but you kind of get, like, pegged. In banking, is like, you're this kind of thing, or you're that kind of thing, you can't really move around teams.
So like the general world of banking, right, there's a million jobs, you know? So if you're a debt guy and you try to go to the equity side, everybody would be like, no, you're a debt guy.
Right.
Right? The tough part about, like, okay, what is the career path of a financial advisor? Well, a successful financial advisor is a financial advisor, right? So me as part of leadership, like, if you're a fast-growing entrepreneur, like, you get it, and you're having success and going to get new clients, I'm going to give you resources, right? And you pick the structure of what most advisors end up on a team. Because a team is kind of like, ideally, it's, I like financial planning, you like the markets, okay? If we partner up and work on our clients together, I get to talk about planning, you get to talk about the markets. Our clients are now getting both, but we get to do what we like to do. So naturally, kind of the industry is moving in that direction, and kind of two sets of eyes are better than one, right? So if you're a successful financial advisor, you might say, hey, I want to build out my own team, right? I want to have 4, 5, 6, 10 advisors working under me, and I'm the king or queen of the castle. You might say, hey, I want a peer. I don't know, right? Like, really, it's what makes the most sense for you, the business. I'll tell you, we were talking before about that 65-year-old client and the 65-year-old advisor. So Merrill has really been talking about building these teams from that concept for a while. We also are trying to build multi-generational teams, so that's if you have a 65-year-old advisor, we try to partner them up with a 40-year-old advisor, then a 30-year-old advisor, then a 20-year-old advisor, so that that client can see, like, okay, I've known this person for 10 years now. I can see a natural, I know them, I trust them. When Sean retires, I'm going to start working with Chris. So that the firm retains that client and we have a smooth transition of them to the next advisor.
How do you keep, like, your superstar advisors? Because, I mean, what's stopping them from just going and saying, I'm going to start my own thing, keep my clients?
Yeah, so it's a challenge, right? So the world of wealth management is weird. So you're accustomed to, you want to quit a job, you give a 2-week notice, right? Financial advisors are effective, so let me just say that from like the Wells, Morgan Stanley, UBS, Merrill Lynch, where they're free agents. So they're getting calls every day. You know, my guys are getting calls every day from Morgan Stanley to say, come over here, come join me. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. So all I do is really help them feel that Merrill Lynch and Merrill Lynch's platform, the culture in our office, is the best place for them to be successful and grow their business, right? And if they decide that they want to move to Morgan Stanley, because Morgan Stanley's got a better mousetrap, they'll walk in on a Friday typically, say, I resign, and as long as it takes them to drive down to Morgan Stanley is when they start over there. And then they start calling their clients and like, hey, just want to let you know I'm at Morgan Stanley now. And I was like, what? You know, because they're used to this whole 2-week thing. Answer?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard, I guess.
Yeah. You had a question?
Yes, I did. Now, you mentioned about like financial products, like you have to know the financial products to be like an financial advisor. Like what, like specifically, like products you're talking about? Like, can you give an example?
Yeah, I mean, look, just within insurance, there's 20 of them, right? So there's a whole slew, like for me to list them all, we'd be here a while.
Well,
There's a bunch, right? So, you know, part of getting licensed, part of becoming a financial advisor, you gotta get your Series 7 and your Series 66. Your Series 7 will give you exposure to basic financial instruments. The test was easier when I took it, because it was kind of like, you know, how much interest is a bond gonna pay? Calculate the number, and if the number's there, you got it right. Now it's, how do you apply that knowledge? The 66 has nothing to do with nothing. So it's like a legal registration test. So if you remember that, like 4 minutes after you pass it, you're doing it wrong. But the 7 will at least give you a baseline of what's happening. And then it's really up to you to leverage the resources around you to get more comfortable in, okay, here's how I include insurance, here's how I include annuities, this is the different types of trusts that are right, here's the difference between a Roth and an IRA account, right?
What kind of roles do you have like for CPAs at Merrill?
So, Merrill Lynch specifically says on every single document that we are not tax advisors, right? We're not gonna give you tax advice, and we always say, contact your CPA with any questions, okay? The firm has an accounting arm, right? Just kind of like the home office. We have many advisors, many, that have success, like CPAs that have built successful practices. Because it's a natural evolution of the discussion, right? They kind of go hand in hand. Will we have financial strategies to minimize the amount of tax you would have to pay? But we're not doing your taxes.
So would you typically have like a CPA on one of your like financial advisor teams?
So I'm out of Florham Park. We supervise Wayne, Sparta, and Upper Montclair. It's a total of 185 advisors. We probably have 15 to 20 CPAs, right? So it's not one where we're building teams around them,
Right.
but I'll tell you, some of our largest teams have CPAs as part of them.
For the taxes?
What else?
I think Metro has a question.
Yeah?
I have a question. You know, what was with all the discussion about the fiduciary rules? Can you give some comment on the role of wealth management and the fiduciary relationship? How you see that?
Yep. So is everybody kind of familiar with the question, like the context of the question?
No.
All right. So through the Department of Labor, so we have a couple different legislative bodies that oversee, you know, the decisions that we're making every day. So the SEC for a long time, Securities and Exchange Commission, for a long time is trying to put in rules that would really have provide oversight to the guidance that we're giving our clients and making sure that from a fiduciary perspective, we're giving advice that's always in the client's best interest, okay? And why this whole thing came about is because, if you think kind of back in the day, everybody's retirement funds came from pensions, right? So effectively, their retirements were, you know, guaranteed by the company as long as the company was around. That is now totally the opposite, where everybody's retirement is coming from their 401k and their IRA, right? So there's a lot of different quality of advice that you could get on those assets. And when we talk about you know, how that's going to tie into your retirement, the government wanted to make sure that the decisions and advice that we're providing our clients were in the client's best interest. So the construct of it SEC really couldn't get it together. So through the Obama administration, they came down through the Department of Labor, which oversees retirement accounts, okay? So it really started with our inability to give transactional, so there's two ways you can do business with us. One is what I said before, that $1 million at 1%. So under that advisory fee, we could do 1 million trades or we could do one and you pay the same fee. Make sense? The other one is where you pay per transaction,
Oh,
okay? So in a world where you can pay per transaction, if I'm giving you advice on your retirement account, it's in my best interest as the advisor to make you do more transactions.
When did that start? You always had those two options, or was?
Yeah, so it was really, first you paid per transaction, and then advisory came later. So the government's like, hold on, time out, right? Everybody's got their money in retirement accounts. We have advisors that are advising clients to take money out of their 401ks and putting into retirement accounts so that they can manage it. One, that's advice that I'm giving you that is in my, as the advisor's interest, right? Number two, every time I have you do a transaction, I get paid. So I'm gonna try to get you to do a bunch of transactions so I get paid more. Make sense?
Yeah.
So they came out with this fiduciary standard. In practice, it's very difficult to implement that because some clients want to be able to do transactions. They're like, hey, I'm the guy that's only going to do one transaction a year. Like, why do I have to now pay the $10,000? Right? I'm not the guy that's trying to do 1 million transactions. At Merrill, we had a unique solution to that. So I don't want to get too technical, but just for comparison purposes. Now, Morgan Stanley, the way that they structure their advisory accounts, they charge a different rate on cash, on fixed income, and on stocks, okay? Merrill, we charge, it doesn't matter what the asset is, but the fees are based on the size of the account. So I don't care if you're in fixed income or stocks, I'm just gonna do what makes sense for you. But you could, on the other side, if there's a disparity between, if I'm gonna get paid more to have you in stock, I might want you to have more in stock. We have, what we talked about before, our different channels. We have Merrill Edge. Merrill Edge is a platform where you could do transactions by yourself. So what our decision as a firm was that we were going to block, because the rule was in the process of being implemented, all right? But the government was like, here's going to be the rules of the game that you got to play by, and you got to play by June 2018. So leading up to that, we had to get kind of the ship in order so that we were ready for launch day. We leveraged our Merrill Edge platform to say all transactional business will happen down there, and the client will be solely responsible for that. All advisory business will happen up with our advisors. As you can imagine, most of our clients that were doing transactions wanted their advisors to keep doing it. The advisors didn't want to send any business down to our self-directed platform. And candidly, if I went through a boardroom of advisors and say this was our color carpet, and I said, hey guys, I just want to let you know that I'm going to be changing the carpet to be this green, 20% of them will lose their minds, right? Because it's just their ability to adapt to change. I think overall from the industry, the fiduciary standard was the right thing to do. In our managed platform, we've been fiduciaries for years. That's part of the deal of operating under that account as part of the agreement that you sign. I think from execution and implementation, we can't have it broken up between being just retirement accounts and not other accounts, not taxable accounts. And that's where I help, the SEC comes into play and makes a rule that really takes that conflict out. Because in the end of the day, it is the right thing. We just got to get there in a path that's smoothest for clients and the industry. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much, it was very, very good.
Thanks. Anything else up there?
Actually, yeah, going on the fiduciary cares, does Merrill Lynch have like training sessions for their employees any sort of plans that could be implemented, like retirement or anything else?
Yeah, so we almost have too much training. And I think it's really from the perspective of how do you learn, okay? So if you want to learn, if you're a reader and once you read it, you got it, there you go, there's the book, right? We have off-site training sessions. So when you join me as an advisor, I'll send you off-site for a week down to Baltimore where we kind of like give you intensive sales training to this is how you do it and these are the resources around you, okay? Then we do a lot of best practice sharing with the advisors in the boardroom and role play. So we really try to kind of come at it at a couple different angles depending on what works for you. You know, the way that you're going to learn best is really putting it into action. I find people that, look, there's designations out the wazoo here, right? We've got the CFP, the CFA, the SEMA, the CHFC, like I could go on and on and on. And I got a lot of people that think having the letters at the end of their name is what's going to differentiate them. And it does. It shows a commitment to being an expert in your field. But eventually you got to go out and apply it, right? And like you want to learn how options work, bet your own money. You'll learn real quick, right? You could read about them all day, but once you've got a vested interest in it, it's a different ballgame. But from like a fiduciary compliance perspective, we have mandates that we have to complete pretty much every 3 months. We have blocks of them, and we do them annually, and those are required by the SEC and FINRA. What else? My time is up. Go ahead.
Who are your biggest clients? Like who like is it mostly companies, like people? Like who are your like big clients?
So our biggest clients tend to be business owners, right? Real estate, that's kind of where the wealth is. But on the business bank, we bank, they say that between Bank of America and Merrill Lynch, 1 in 2 people have an account with the firm. You know, so we're actively trying to introduce Bank of America clients to Merrill Lynch advisors and Merrill Lynch advisors to Bank of America, right? So you really think that half of our opportunity is already inside the door. We just got to, you know, uncover what, if you're a business owner and I'm managing your wealth, I want to connect you to our business bank so we could bank your business as well.
Thank you.
Good? So, you know, stick around to ask some questions. In those folders, my apologies, I'll send you up our contact info that was in here, just so you have it handy for you.
Thank you.
But if anybody wants to continue the discussion, my assistant's business card is in there. So if you reach out to him, he'll schedule a time to get on my calendar, and we'll talk about what it's all about. Sound good?
Good. Thank you.